Okay, good morning and welcome to the January 5th, 2021 meeting of the State Designer Selection Board. I will call the roll, and after I say your name, please indicate that you are present. Erin Fogarty Miller, Board Support.
Here.
Sue Anderson, representing Minnesota State Arts Board.
Present.
Bill Byer, representing AIA Minnesota.
Present.
Tom Murphy, representing AGC.
Present.
Jan Shagaloff, representing ACEC.
Present.
Ted Tucker, public member of the board.
Present.
And Glenn, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce those from your side of the table.
Yeah, Wayne Wisloski is on. He's the Director of Real Estate Construction Services. I'm Glenn Haino with Real Estate Construction Services. I'm going to be the project manager as the project moves forward. And with Homeland Security Energy Management agency, under the agency of Department of Public Safety, we have Joe Kelly. He's the Director of HSCM. And Kevin Reed, he's the Assistant Director.
And I am Catherine Leonidas, Chair and Public Member of the Board. And I note for the record at this time, we have two people who are attending who are non-participants at this moment. I'd like to remind you of a couple of things. First of all, there is a chat feature and a raise hand feature of this WebEx platform. Please don't use those. If you need to say something, please just chime in. We've been very, it's been rather easy for us to manage, the input from different people. But by the same token, if somebody talks over you, don't be shy and talk, and please come in afterwards. Understand for Joe and Kevin that this is recorded, and this tape will be made available to the public, more importantly to the firms that are shortlisted as they prepare for their interviews in a couple of weeks. I also remind the board and everyone else that we get feedback. We get feedback if you rustle paper, we get feedback if you open a thermos, we get feedback. So if you could mute your microphones when you think you might be doing those things, that would be really appreciated, particularly for those who want to listen going forward. We have one main item today, and that is shortlisting for project 2003. Excuse me. Yeah, 2003. I turn your attention to the agenda and ask if there are any changes or corrections. Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Tucker.
Second, Shagaloff.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Turn your attention to the meeting minutes of our meeting on December 29th. Any changes or corrections? Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved, Tucker.
Second, Byer.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed. Okay, so here we are. The next agenda item is the shortlisting for project 2003. And just for Kevin and Joe in particular, just to give you an idea of how this is going to work, we're going to ask you folks to give us more of an explanation of the project. We will likely have questions about the project, and then we're going to review each of the 7 proposals that were submitted. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Glenn to help us understand a little bit more about the project.
Well, I'm going to defer to Joe Kelly because I think he is very passionate about this project and probably have a better explanation for all of us. Joe?
Okay.
Hey, Glenn. Good morning. Good morning, board members. Thanks for your participation, and in this very important project. We've been, as Glenn has alluded to a couple of times, we've been pursuing this for more than 10 years. We went through the pre-design process back and finished it in 2011, and now with full funding, we're sort of restarting. But just for your perspective, the State Emergency Operations Center is what it sounds like. It's an emergency operations center where we gather representatives of state agencies, federal partners, and local communities, volunteers, to coordinate the state's response to an emergency or a disaster. And typically we gather folks from state agencies like the Minnesota National Guard, the Department of Transportation, State Patrol, Health, etc. And as requests for assistance come in from local governments, that's the clearinghouse and the coordination center where we do that. We are in the midst of our largest activation ever, which has really taught us a lot of things about what kind of facility we need, not just for your typical spring flood or wildfire, but a global pandemic. We are on day 296 of continuous activation here at our facility in downtown St. Paul. Currently we have probably a couple dozen people that are working in the main EOC on a irregular basis. We've had over 100 here. So again, when you think about the size and scale of this, we've had over 100 here, and we should plan for having 200 folks from a variety of different agencies that would come into a central location and do everything from coordination of the allocation of resources to communicating with the public. So picture a operations center, if you will, pick your favorite, movie, disaster movie or military movie where they show an operations center. In addition, we also have the offices for, I would say, for our planning purposes, about 75 staff. And the collaborative workspace and individual workstations that type of team would need. So I look at this project in two big chunks. One is a state-of-the-art operations center, and the other big chunk is the offices and workspace for our agency staff. It is a one-of-a-kind, needs to be a no-fail type of a facility, and by that we mean it needs to be able to be secured. It needs to have adequate redundancy, backup sources of power, communications, and those types of things. So the facility we've been in here in downtown St. Paul probably fails on almost all of our critical requirements, but that's okay. That's in the past now. I don't need to give you the legislative testimony as to why we need this facility. So I don't know if you maybe it's easier to just answer questions about the facility and what we need from it. I guess we had the two big chunks, the operations center and our offices. There's an ancillary piece, and that is to have a media center where the governor or the commissioner or cabinet members can come and create and broadcast a high quality media event, if you will. Right now we got the governor kind of rattling around from about 3 or 4 different locations in downtown St. Paul, and that is clearly one of our bigger things, is as an adjunct to that operations center is to have the public information media center. And the other is that this is a dual use or triple use facility, and that we also need a continuity of government facility. So we need a place without replicating the Capitol where we can bring the governor and the other constitutional officers, members of the governor's cabinet, and legislative leaders together to do some collaborative decision making and communicating. So those are kind of the big chunks, and I don't know if that's what you're looking for, Glenn, but certainly available to answer any questions about about the functionality or the things that we need here.
That was perfect. I didn't know about the two ancillary needs compared to last time, so that's good.
So turning to the board, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple. My first question is, what is the project delivery methods? It's a construction manager at risk, or it's a kind of traditional delivery?
We've already made the decision to go construction manager at risk,
Okay.
and we've already started the process so we can get them on earlier with the design team.
Mhm.
But just, I want to tag on to that, Glenn, when the RFP was put out and you had your mandatory walkthrough, that was not known at the time, right?
Correct. We told them we were leaning that direction, but hadn't made that decision. And since then, we did determine it was more important to get them on to actually be there, probably at the start of design development, to help the team.
Okay.
Yeah, my second question is, as a building itself, what is the requirement for anti-terrorism protection? You know, what?
We are starting the project out as a pre-design. We have gone over it before, and if there was a scale of 1 to 10 on hardness, we're in the middle. But those are all the things that the design team is going to help us with, help Homeland Security Emergency Management, because we're both designing to a budget and a need, and hardness is in there. So where all these lines intersect will be the perfect project.
Okay.
Catherine, I have a couple questions as well.
You bet.
So
Hey, Glenn,
congratulations on Kevin on this job. This is really exciting work, and I have heard the legislative testimony on it several times myself, so it's really exciting. That was a statement. My question is on the selection of the designer, if the pre-design, and then the language in the RFP says that the remainder of the schematic and full design will be via supplemental agreement. That was pretty interesting to me. I don't know if I've seen something like that before. So can you just explain to me what flexibility you think you're going to get from that, or why you've taken that approach?
We have done that on past projects. It helps with the continuity of the project and keep it moving forward. The need for Emergency Operations Center is apparent, and we don't want to delay the process. After the pre-design is done, we will negotiate with an expected range of fees with the selected firm. And if we can't reach an agreement, we have the right to go to the second firm.
Okay. The other question is regarding the site location, kind of sight unseen. Just curious how you foresee that to play out. I mean, it sounds like you have a short listing of some sites, and then I'm just curious why you didn't select a site. Do you want to give flexibility to the design team, or cost, or what's your thinking there, Glenn?
When we originally did a pre-design over a decade ago, we had a traffic study plan done, and they determined that a site in the North Metro was ideal. So we have been working on this short list of sites in the background and have not come to an agreement on any site yet. So it probably still is an unknown if the design team is going to be helping us with site selection, or if we'll have one about the time they're under contract.
I have a question regarding the pre-design that was done 10 years ago. Is this a start over, do-over kind of project, or is there some value to be salvaged from that work?
Certainly a lot of value, but we are treating it as a start over, mainly because of the lessons learned. Technology changes in 10 years. you know, and now the media center aspect, the continuity of government aspect. There's just some new requirements on what they've learned over the past.
Thanks.
Well, it sounds as though this last few months have been a lot of lessons learned as well. So, other questions from the board? So I have a couple. You talk, the site is not known, but you also talk about potentially a shared facility. I mean, having another actor or another component in there. Do you know when that decision will be made?
That decision's already been made.
Okay.
Stand facility.
Okay.
And we did indicate that in an addendum to the RFP, I believe.
Okay. Okay. Can you also talk about the role of the security consultant? You know, different firms took it in different directions. One, which was the, you know, we're putting in all of the CCTV cameras and we're doing, you know, all that kind of thing. And the other has taken the approach of we need to look at someone who can do some risk management for us. What's your intention here?
All of the above. The facility needs to be secure in itself. It needs to be redundant in power and communications. It needs to be secured just from, I don't know, protesters out front,
Okay.
or people trying to sneak in. So and communications is probably the top one. So it does fall under all those categories. Like you noted, that there was consultants all over the board on security. So it's going to be partly the charge of the design team to help us with what's needed.
Okay. So I have a couple. Sorry, I have a couple more. You've listed a lot of requirements for the architectural side of your team. 15 years of experience, or a minimum of 15 years of experience. What's the name? Flesh that out for me, Glenn, because I'm trying to figure out whether it's I've got a lot of experience, or I had experience over 15 years ago, or is it I have experience currently on the state of the art of these facilities?
I chose, and it was my decision. I chose 15 years just because that puts us before the last time we asked all these people to help us with a pre-design. So if they've been doing emergency operation centers since that time, 11 years ago, I think they should be in the running, because if you note in all these proposals, they've all done emergency operation centers. So I think that was just a good number out of the hat to get qualified firms.
And then as we look, so the definition of experience in the architectural world is one thing. What about experience in the consulting world, particularly the electrical, AV, security? You're looking for more current experience on that, or is there not a threshold that you're anxious?
Probably not a threshold. It'd probably be more the experience.
Okay.
In fact, when we were doing primary and secondary scoring criteria, the experience of the firm and the experience of the staff were very high on the list. So I was tending to look at the number of facilities, not necessarily EOC, but just the critical mission type EOC projects.
Okay. Any other question from the board? So with that, let's now go and look at each of these proposals. Before we do that, Glenn, I'm going to ask you to confirm that you've had no prior contact with the proposals about the project outside of the Q&A process and the informational meeting. Okay. And this in part is for Joe and Kevin, but These proposals are confidential, and therefore we need to refer to them by their letter, firm A, firm B, firm C, as well as the individuals. So rather than saying an individual's name, we refer to them as the project manager or the designer or the electrical engineer. We've all been known to slip up and say a firm's name. And in the past, we've been able to edit that out of the audio tapes. We can't do that with this tape, with this kind of recording, but don't worry. I mean, it happens. Don't get flustered, and we just move on. I point out to you the criteria that was in the RFP. Of primary importance are the qualifications, technical competence in the required field, and prior performance. The project understanding, approach, and methodology. Of secondary importance is their leadership, integration, and cohesiveness of the team, their ability to deal with aesthetic factors, and their understanding and experience and approach to sustainability and energy efficiency. So just to, again, for Joe and Kevin, just to give you an idea how we're going to do this, we're going to take these one at a time. We typically talk about the team. Is it complete? Is it the right experience for the project? Are their roles clearly defined? How are they organized? How will they work together? And how will they work with you? Then we talk about the projects. You know, are the projects comparable and give confidence that they will understand the scope of this project? And then we talk about aesthetics. And so team, project, aesthetics, do the project examples and design narrative give confidence in their ability to meet the project's goals. And then lastly, and perhaps what I think is the heart and soul of these proposals, is their approach and methodology. So we'll talk about, do they convey an understanding of the project? What is their approach that will meet the goals of their project? So with that, let us turn to firm A. And let me just, so why don't I start off? We'll talk about the team. I think the team is complete, although I'm not sure who their specialist is. As a registered communication distribution designer, I suspect it's one of these folks, but they've not identified that. But I think by and large, I think the team is complete. It's not clear to me as I look at this how they're folding in the role of planning and operations consultant. And it just wasn't evident in how they described the relationship of their team. And I suspect that that role is going to be very important in this process.
And I noted through several of these proposals, I don't know if it's a term of art or what, but it didn't match up in many of the proposals.
That's right.
And I think they're all there, but
yeah.
And I'm not picking on any particular project or a proposer, but it was difficult. And I think because they've done a lot of these projects all over the country, that they call them something different in different places. That's the only conclusion I could come to, but I'm not blaming anyone, but it is a little confusing throughout all of them.
Yeah, the term subject matter expert, didn't land particularly well, nor did we get that understanding either through their organization part or through their approach and methodology, which is where you typically see it.
In terms of the team, what I noticed and wasn't sure of, it didn't seem like there was a lot of federal experience. I didn't see GSA, a lot of governmental work, more maybe local, state, municipality, if I looked at this right. And I was looking hard for how registered that security specialist was. Maybe they just didn't note RCDD, but there were some specific things that were called out in the RFP that included that United Facility Compliance, the UFC special articles of knowledge. And I didn't see that with any of the team members where it would count.
Other comments on this team? And you're going to hear this from me. So let's talk about their project examples. And you're going to probably hear this for all 7 firms. I'm going to look to Glenn and to Joe because I think many of these projects we don't know enough about. But I can't tell looking at the projects if they're particularly relevant to this project. So I guess I look to Glenn and Joe for comments on the project experience. Glenn, you're on mute.
Yeah, when you see EOC, that one's obvious, but also in the same vein of project would be the SCIFs, that's compartmentalized projects, mission critical facilities. And we had an order in the RFP of what would be more important. Oh, I'm sorry, that was probably in the CM at risk one where it was actually in an order. But I'd say EOCs, SCIFs, data centers all kind of fall into the same electronic parts of it.
Other comments? So, as I look through these projects, there are such different scopes and magnitudes. It's hard for me to kind of evaluate. So the operations center, for instance, in Williston, that I believe is under construction. And that is one where the EOC consultant was engaged and involved. The other 2 projects, only the cost estimator and the project manager were involved in those projects. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, do these projects support the notion that these individuals can do the work? We need coffee this morning.
So I'll give you my opinion. I mean,
that's what we need.
If you compare it to all the proposals, I'd say yes, they have the experience to do one, but they are probably the lightest on the examples of qualified projects.
Okay.
Yeah. I think they're relying quite a bit on the fact that they are currently working with their consultant on the project that leads their experience. It seems to be the strength that they're promoting.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure about the project on page 11. Is that a university facility or is that a teaching lab versus a true operations center?
Yeah, this is Joe. When I look at that project, I don't see that as necessary, not being very comparable to our project. The one on page 9 is, but it's at a very I would say small scale. It's like it probably has the pieces, but just the magnitude. And then I am a little confused by the one on page 10 because it's got a lot of other ancillary facilities that don't necessarily relate to a state emergency operations center. There's a significant portion of that, if I'm reading this right, involves some other, maintenance facilities and things of that nature. So, yes, but not strong correlation. The project on page 9 is probably the closest, but again, a facility that's the scale is probably significantly different than what we're looking at. But at least probably the components are there.
Joe, I'm back to a question, not so much on this proposal, but what's the difference between a state facility and say a county or a city facility? Is there a significant difference?
I think I would say, a state facility, or excuse me, a county facility is going to have the county government departments that are coming together to again support a response from all different types of functional areas like road maintenance, law enforcement, utilities, public health, etc. But it's all within the county for the most part. When you get to a state emergency operations center, your course could have something as broad as the entire county, all of state government, and then maybe more critically, these external partners, particularly from federal agencies like FEMA, the Department of Defense, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and so forth. So again, it's a similar function, but it's quite different because of the scale and or the breadth and depth. One is sort of a intramural operation inside a county, and the other is much more interscholastic, if you will, bringing in all kinds of partners from a much broader range.
Okay. Other comments about their project experience?
I've got a note here about their energy efficiency track record in terms of B3. Looks like there's specialty there. They're specialists, in fact, influence of passage of the 2030. And also the architect themselves have won, well, they've been finalists in B3 projects for awards.
So any other comments about the projects in particular before we move on to aesthetics? And I know that was a secondary criteria. I don't know that it needs much more comment than, their projects look nice, both inside and out. So I'm sure they will do a terrific job in terms of your facility. Moving on to approach and methodology. Comments about that? And to me, this is where the heart and soul is of a proposal. I mean, you'll get a lot about how a firm will work with you, what they think the issues are related to the project. So comments about this approach and methodology. Okay, well, I'll start then. I thought it started off fairly strong, page 12 and 13. They seem to have a good grasp of what the project was, talking about the site, talking about efficiency and layout or design. But I thought that they really didn't get much beyond that in terms of what is their approach to either the design process or their thoughts or issues that will need to struggle with during the design.
I agree with Catherine. I thought that it was okay. It wasn't boilerplate or anything. A little bit of detail, but what drew my attention, and maybe this is not right, but I felt that there was a real negativity to the constraints of project page where it seemed like, yes, there's lots of things to consider, that constraints on every project, but I don't know, it just seemed like it was in a negative light.
Yeah, I have the same comment Sue has. It's kind of a new project, and it's seems like constraints is kind of more related to existing project or remodeling, but it should be solved this constraint during design. It's not really a constraint. It's a design issue.
I didn't have any sense that they saw that the building would help the personnel work together, gather together, relieve stress, all those other things that I think have been mentioned earlier is important. There's a lot of technical, high-tech, how human beings will operate here and use these tools successfully. I didn't get a sense of that in this one and several others, but we'll come back to that.
Right. Other comments about their approach and methodology? With that, they are a Minneapolis firm, neither targeted nor veteran owned, and their net fees per Minnesota employee are $12,435. Moving on to Firm B.